Why do U.S. officials continue to prosecute and persecute Julian Assange? Join Richard Ebeling and me in this week's Libertarian Angle as we examine that question. I am Jacob Hornberger, president of the Future of Freedom Foundation. This is this week's Libertarian Angle, the show that y'all know brings you the principled, uncompromising case for libertarianism, the libertarian philosophy, especially or mostly in the context of the burning issues of the day. And I'm joined, as I am every week, by my co-host Richard Ebeling, professor of economics at the Citadel and libertarian par excellence. Richard, good to see you again.
Good to see you too. It's good to be with our viewers and listeners once more.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. If you're new to FFF and you're being introduced to our foundation with this video, come and visit us at fff.org for, 32, 33 years of principled, uncompromising perspectives, both video form, articles. Richard writes for us every month. I write every day in a blog, plus in our monthly journal. You can subscribe to that. You can subscribe to our daily FFF Daily, which is free, which we strive to make the best libertarian commentary page on the internet. You can buy my new book, An Encounter with Evil, the Abraham Zapruder story. So, Richard, one of the burning issues of the day, and one that's going to be front page news, I think, in the next 30 to 60 days, is Julian Assange. And I know we've addressed this before, but I think it's worth revisiting this thing because it's so reflective of what's happened to our country, the state in which we're living. And so let's revisit it. That, as you know, the U.S. government has indicted Assange for violation of the Espionage Act, this relic from World War I, where countless thousands of American men were wasted for nothing in that foreign intervention, and civil liberties were destroyed. But they're trotting out that old law from that crooked, corrupt war to indict Assange, and they've been fighting for his extradition for 10 years or so. Assange is being held in a brutal prison in Great Britain. I think from all accounts, it would seem that U.S. officials would be very happy just to see him die in that prison. And of course, the Brits are doing whatever U.S. officials want. Britain has long been a poodle of the United States. They're going to follow orders from the United States. And so Assange has been fighting this thing in the courts, but he never stood a chance. And now he's got one last appeal, but it's really just a superficial, cursory appeal. He's going to get nowhere with that. And then at that point, they're going to put him on a plane, and he's going to come back, and they're going to put him in a federal penitentiary while they pursue him criminally, and with the objective of convicting him and putting him in some super max prison as a way to teach everybody a lesson within the national security establishment and elsewhere. You do not reveal our dark side secrets. That if you reveal our dark side secrets, this is what's going to happen to you. And Edward Snowden, he can attest to this as well. That's what Assange did. He was in charge of WikiLeaks, and they came to acquire all these records and documents and videos showing dark side practices of the national security establishment. Well, this is a super no-no. I mean, when the U.S. government was converted from a limited government republic to a national security state after World War II, there was an implicit bargain with the American people. We're going to do dark side things, assassinations, torture, secret prison camps, and so forth. But we will keep it secret from you so that your conscience won't be bothered. We're doing this to keep you safe, but you don't need to worry about your sense of morality because it's going to be kept secret. So a guy like Assange comes along, he interferes with that contract. He says, no, this is what they're doing, and some people were outraged. I mean, there are clearly some war crimes here that Assange disclosed. So that's what this is all about, Richard. It's not only a way to punish him for having done this, and keep in mind that while he's being charged with the Espionage Act, he's not even an American citizen. He's an Australian citizen. But what this is also all about is sending a word to everybody within the national security establishment and everybody outside the national security establishment. If you acquire our dark side secrets, you better keep them secret. You better keep your mouth shut, or we're going to come after you and destroy you. What do you think?
Well, let's remember a little bit about why the security and the military establishment in the United States became so, how can I put it, upset. Because, well, I guess it was about 2010. He got a slew of documents from Chelsea Manning, who had been involved in intelligence work in the military, and she had released these documents to him about a variety of, how can I delicately put it, abuses of the rules of war and methods of pursuing war in Iraq. And this upset them immensely because this was pointing at, as you're putting it, the dark side of how the U.S. military and the intelligence agencies pursued a war that Congress never passed an act of declaration of war to pursue. Then, on top of that, in 2016, he released on his Wiki intelligence page, he released documents about Hillary Clinton's campaign and how there was internal manipulations during the primaries leading up to the 2016 presidential election of the Democratic establishment working for her and against Bernie Sanders. I'm shocked. I'm shocked that the party insiders should try to manipulate the outcome of an election. I'm shocked. And a whole variety of others that he was releasing of this sort, all of which upset the Democratic Party establishment, who upset the military and intelligence community in the United States, and basically broke the taboo that while we point out the abuses and brutalities and extra-legal methods by which other governments pursue their certainly domestic, but including foreign policy adventures and purposes, the United States government is either to be exempted from such criticisms when information comes out, because we're the good guys, or we are to just cover it under the rug and it is never to be spoken about, as you were suggesting. So for a long time, he has eluded the attempt of the US government to get a hold of him. He has a long trail of these legal problems. Just to remind the listeners and viewers, if I may, for a minute, Jacob. At first, the Swedes wanted him extradited from Great Britain because of charges of sexual misconduct. That eventually was dropped. And that was considered a ruse of just trying to get him on a path of legal restrictions that would eventually lead to him being extradited to the US anyway. But those charges got dropped by the Swedes. And then the US came after him while he was still in England. And he then went into the Ecuadorian embassy requesting political asylum, which the Ecuadorian government gave him there. And he lived in the Ecuadorian embassy in London for quite a while. He had a dispute with them about his use of computers and continuing his release of various documents indirectly. And so they basically took away what had been a promise for him to be able to get from the embassy in London to asylum itself in Ecuador. And now the Brits took over. They were given permission by the Ecuadorian government to enter the Ecuadorian embassy. And embassies are usually considered the territory of the country that has that property. In other words, extraterritoriality. A host government cannot enter the embassy of a visiting or participating or ambassadorial country because that is their territory. So they just let the British into their embassy to seize him. And he's now been sitting in a British prison for quite a while as the United States has pursued its extradition procedures through the British legal system there. Procedure, appeal. But now it seems that he's reaching the end of his appeals, as you were suggesting, in the next 2-3 months. It is very likely that the appeal process will come to an end. He will be turned over to U.S. Legal authorities to be flown from Great Britain back to the United States, where he will be charged under these treason and espionage issues. The fact is that, again, I'm reiterating part of what you said, he is an Australian. He's not a United States citizen. He received these documents from American citizens, but he was publishing them outside of the United States. But this is another instance, Jacob, and I think it needs to be emphasized, is that the United States does not recognize the jurisdictions of any other country other than its own. As far as the United States government is concerned, the world is under American political and legal jurisdiction. It doesn't like what a country does and imposes economic sanctions, a la Russia right now. And if one country proceeds to evade those, or the citizens of some other country evades or avoids or refuses to recognize such sanctions, the US government then goes against those foreign citizens of other countries and the country itself to punish them for doing anything outside of what the US government has decided is right for the world. This is a situation in which America basically says it is the master of the universe, and anyone who violates, threatens, questions, or undermines the foreign policies of the US government will have the entire legal system of the federal government come down upon them, regardless of what corner of the earth they may be residing.
Yeah, absolutely. While you were talking, I was remembering that video of the helicopter attack, where some U.S. helicopter, I suppose it was in Iraq, just started firing at these innocent people, and the pilots were just lighthearted about it. I mean, it was just repugnant, absolutely repugnant, and that's what they're so angry about. This is what goes on all the time. You can go back to Vietnam. You know that the myth always was that My Lai, the massacre of My Lai, was an aberration. That it was one of a kind. Well, as the journalist Nick Turse documented in his book, he uncovered all these records from the Pentagon showing, no, this was just customary procedure. My Lai happened dozens of times. This was kill everybody on sight. And you bring up a point about Iraq that's important to remember. Not only was there no U.S. declaration of war from Congress, which the Constitution requires as a prerequisite to waging war, so the war was illegal under our form of government, violated our law. But equally important, Iraq had never attacked the United States, never threatened to attack the United States. So all these people that they were killing, Richard, were just people in a sovereign, independent country whose regime had never attacked the United States. It was clearly just an illegal war of aggression, a type of war that was condemned as a war crime at Nuremberg. And so here, a guy like Assange comes along and in the midst of this discloses that it's even worse than you're seeing here. It's not just a war of aggression against a sovereign independent country where you're killing masses of people and destroying the country. You're doing some real bad dark side stuff here. And that's why they decided to go after him. Now, a lot of the defenders of Assange have gone off on First Amendment issue of freedom of the press. They're saying that this is a threat to the press generally, that if the New York Times or the Washington Post discloses these things, they're going to end up getting indicted too. And what's interesting is the mainstream press has really not come to the defense of Assange based on this argument. It's either they're too cowed, they're too worried about what the Pentagon, the CIA will do to them if they come to Assange's defense. So those people that are making this argument, I think it's a legitimate argument. Now they're saying, well, WikiLeaks isn't a legitimate newspaper or media outlet, and therefore freedom of the press doesn't apply. Well, that's nonsense. I mean, how do you define what's a correct newspaper or media outlet? But I think more fundamentally, Richard, and this is where I think the freedom of the press advocates are missing the boat. To me, this is not a free press issue. This is a freedom of speech issue. This applies to everybody, whether WikiLeaks is a newspaper or media outlet is irrelevant. Everybody in the world has the fundamental God-given right, as Jefferson declared in the Declaration of Independence, to speak his mind. And that includes speaking your mind about what records have come into your possession. Why should it depend on whether you're a media outlet or not? Why shouldn't you or me, if we have records of dark side activities, just say, hey, go on the internet, look what I have. Why should we have to prove that we're some kind of newspaper or something? That's ridiculous. Freedom of speech entails the right to say whatever you want and to disclose whatever you want, even or especially when it upsets federal officials.
Yeah, to show sort of no sense of it's not a matter of ignoring a double standard, not even thinking that it is a double standard. So let's think of some of the instances where during the Cold War, the Soviets took extra legal methods. In the 1920s, early 1930s, I guess it was, there was a famous exiled Russian author, Yevgeny Zamyatin. He wrote a very famous anti-collectivist novel called We. In many ways, it's along the same line as Ayn Rand's Anthem. And he was killed in Paris, presumed by Stalin's NKVD, the secret police. Then there was this fellow, Walter Krivetsky. He defected to the United States during the Spanish Civil War. And in the late 40s, early 50s, wrote this book revealing the inner secrets of the Stalin's Soviet system, because he had been a high intelligence and military official operating for them during the Spanish Civil War. He flew out of a window of a Washington apartment building to his death. And we were shocked by this. And if the Soviets had had a way to extradite people who had revealed their governmental dark sides, they would have attempted to do it. Of course, the British, the French, the US wouldn't extradite such people because they're telling the truth. They're revealing the secrets of the evil power. Well, we're certainly horrified when the Soviets used extraterritorial and extra legal methods to do this. Why is it that the United States can use its drone methods to attack, including American citizens who they suspect of acting in ways that the US government doesn't like, to either intimidate or kill them abroad, or to now use these legal methods to bring people to heel who speak what the government doesn't want the public to hear? The fact is, in these ways, it's a generic problem of governments, whether it be an evil, dark government like the former Soviet Union, or Putin's Russia today with its poisonings of people, both in Russia and outside of Russia, or the United States government pursuing Assange. It's an instance where governments presume that they have powers beyond mortal men, and that their authority is outside of and above the law as they define it for their practical and expedient purposes of control and authority. And that is the emperor's clothes that needs to be eliminated. That whether a foreign government does this, whether the US government does this, it is absolutely and fundamentally a threat to liberty, freedom of speech, freedom of information, freedom to understand how other governments and your own government operate, and to expect to hold them accountable for their actions, which is what a government in a free society is supposed to be about.
Yeah, and notice that when we were a limited government republic for about the first 150 years, you really didn't see these dark side activity. It was only when they were converted to a national security state that you start getting torture and wars of aggression, foreign interventions, and so forth. I want to emphasize, though, something what I think is important here is that they really have destroyed this man's life. They've taken away 10 or 11 years of his life, whatever he's been, however long he's been there in Great Britain. And that necessarily has to have a stultifying effect on WikiLeaks itself. Now, I know WikiLeaks is still operational, but when you've taken away the person, remove the person who is the inspiration behind the organization and the driving force, it's got to have an effect on the organization itself. and they have effectively just destroyed this man's life. From what I understand, he's even threatening suicide. They have done such bad things to him. They've mentally tortured him, is what they've done. They put him in isolation, which psychiatrists have established is a way to make somebody go insane. They're doing everything they can to destroy him before he gets to the United States. And they've done the same thing with Edward Snowden, whose case is quite similar. Now, he is an American citizen. He was within the bowels of the national security state. But he, in a crisis of conscience, says, I need to disclose what they're doing here with their secret surveillance plans, which was illegal, and which were illegal. And everybody acknowledges that now, that the mass secret surveillance that the NSA was engaged in as part of their global war on terror post 9/11 was illegal under our form of government. Here's a man out of a crisis of conscience that says, I need to reveal this. Well, they go after him with a vengeance. They're not thankful that he did this. They're not grateful. He also revealed that the I forget, it was the director of national intelligence or something, had lied. That he had gone before Congress and they'd asked him, do you have these secret surveillance schemes? Oh, no, we're not doing any of that. And Snowden revealed him to be a liar. Well, here's Snowden now having to live in Russia, which it can't be the most pleasant place, especially for a guy that likes to speak out and speak out against injustices. He knows if he does that in Russia, they'll treat him even worse than what the U.S. will treats him. But they've perverted values in this country, Richard. I mean, these are kind of people that should be glorified, honored for speaking the truth, for disclosing things. Notice that they're not angry that they lied. I mean, we all know U.S. officials lie all the time. That's not what these guys, Assange and Snowden, are accused of doing. They're not accused of having made things up. They're accused of telling the truth, and that's their crime, telling the truth. That you're not supposed to do that. And let me give you another example of this perversion of moral values. That ever since the national security state came into existence, they've had the power of assassination. And it generally in the early years was a secret power that they would just exercise under the radar screen. Today, post 9/11, it's a well-publicized power. They're proud of it. They just assassinated a guy, al-Zawahiri in Afghanistan. So it's a power that they're proud of. But during the Cold War era, they were assassinating or trying to assassinate people that had never done anything to the United States. And the classic example of this was Fidel Castro. Now they had already assassinated the president of the Congo, Patrice Lumumba, totally innocent guy. I mean, he had never done anything to the United States, and they assassinated him or orchestrated his assassination. But here they have assassination attempts against Castro, who's in charge of a country that has never attacked the United States, never threatened to attack the United States, but in their minds, they have the authority to go and murder somebody, anybody they want. Now, suppose somebody within the government discovers this scheme to assassinate Castro or Lumumba or anybody else they're trying to assassinate that's innocent, and goes and warns that person or discloses it to the press or in the media and says, hey, I want to disclose they're planning to assassinate you. They would treat him as a traitor, as a bad person. He would be hauled into court, and the federal judge undoubtedly would say, you have betrayed your country. You've done something horrible here. You're disgusting because you should never have revealed their plans to assassinate these people. These people decide that within the national security state who's to be assassinated, and who are you as a private citizen to question them or disclose what they're doing. That's how they have really perverted moral values in this country, Richard.
Yes, just to follow up on that, how many movies have appeared in which U.S. intelligence or military people are called upon to unearth and do unearth conspiracies by terrorists to kill Western leaders, the British government, the American government, and they find out that the planned assassination or mass bombing, and at the end of the movie, happy endings, the terrorists have been defeated. Well, I mean, So it's good that we unearth what a bad guy is trying to do to kill an American political or British political figure. But it would be wrong to unearth and report when the US government was going to do this to some other foreign leader. See, this is the asymmetry that America is somehow better and superior to all of them. Now, I can hear the response by perhaps some viewers and listeners. Oh, Jacob Hornberger and Richard Ebeling are saying that Stalin's Russia and Hitler's Germany are just like the United States, or the US are just like them. Of course not. Of course not. Listen, I'm living here in the United States and not in Putin's Russia or Xi Jinping's China. Are their internal systems worse than ours? Are they more directly and immediately crushing any dissent or criticisms? Yes. In Russia today, if you call what's going on in Ukraine a war, you can be sent to jail for 10 years in a Russian prison. That definitely is a slight abridgment of freedom of speech. Certainly. But that doesn't change the fact that merely because your government is neither as heavy-handed or explicit or pervasively cruel in following these types of policies as other countries does not in any way justify or rationalize or offer a defense of your government doing so. We're supposed to stand as an ideal. We always viewed ourselves as a country as that beacon on a hill of liberty. And the goal was to practice what we were preaching to serve as an ideal and an inspiration for other peoples in other parts of the world to emulate. What type of ideal or example is this when our government, in its own ways, does things not much different, or in some cases even explicitly, in particular cases, more egregiously than other governments are doing, that we condemn for the practices?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That if you're going to lead, you got to lead by example, and I think that's where libertarianism comes into play. I think there's really just one great big hope. We're mired in a great big morass in this country. We know that. It's a deep morass that involves various aspects. Fiscal policy. I mean, they are bankrupting our country with their out of control spending, debt. The Federal Reserve is debauching the currency. We can see that with rising prices. They're debasing the currency. We've got these foreign policy crises, two of which are getting us perilously close to nuclear war. It's one gigantic mess. Assaults on civil liberties, things like what they're doing to Assange, to Snowden, the perversion, the warping of moral values. But there's one hope in all this. There's one light, and that's libertarianism. I mean, that's us, and all the other libertarians. In all this darkness, we're the light. And what we've got to do is keep making that light brighter and brighter and brighter. Now, Assange is not a libertarian, but this is a libertarian issue, what he's being prosecuted for. And so what we've got to do is keep brightening that light and shining that light on Assange and hopefully more and more people, so that when he is brought to the United States, that there's this gigantic awareness of what they're doing to him is wrong. It's absolutely wrong. This is not what a great nation does. And hopefully then, as we start witnessing what they do to him in federal court and keeping him in jail, because I have no doubt they're not going to let him out on bond, that people can start doing some reflecting and some reevaluating. And that's what we need in this country, Richard. We need some soul searching. Where we start out as a country, how we got to where we are today. Where did we go wrong? And then once that soul searching takes place, then that's the way we get out of this morass, and then we lead the world to liberty and peace, prosperity and harmony by example.
Yes, the importance is to rediscover the ideal. You know, America is a divided country today. The media keeps pointing out you can't talk to people about politics based upon what side of the political battle you're on in terms of political parties or various forms of American ideologies. But the fact is, transcending all of this is the fact that regardless of the political party and the particular personality and the specific issue, both sides of what appear to be the political debate in the United States among the main parties and main political figures are all variations on the same thing, whether on domestic or foreign policy. America has the right to intervene. America has the right to regulate. America has the right to control. America has the right to redistribute. And certainly redistribution goes beyond just here, because think of all the tens of billions of dollars we did redistribute from hardworking and productive Americans, not just to others in the United States, but to others around the world. We are the masters of global redistribution based upon how the political leaders decide to define it and give special dispensation for certain people abroad to receive the largesse that they have extracted from others in the United States through means of taxation or borrowed funds. So this has to be seen as something transcending the day-to-day politics. It's a battle of ideas, a battle of ideology, a battle of political perspectives. What is the meaning of liberty? What is the right of an individual to have the peaceful pursuit of his own life without infringement by those in political authority? And therefore, what is the proper role of government in a free society? And what should it not be allowed to do? And if it does it, it should be revealed. And those who have been doing it, well, and under a representative system, the means, if you're not going to legally pursue them, at a minimum, throw the rascals out and replace them with those who will be more principled in following the ideals upon which the country has been founded.
Okay, on that excellent and eloquent note, we'll wrap things up. Again, if you're new to FFF, come over to fff.org. Subscribe to our FFF Daily, also to our monthly journal, Future of Freedom, for which Richard writes every month, along with Jim Bovard, Lawrence Vance, me. And subscribe to this YouTube channel, of course, and buy my new book, An Encounter with Evil, the Abraham Zapruder story, which delves into a lot of the types of things we're talking about today. Richard, I greatly enjoyed this conversation as always, and I look forward to talking to you next week.
Till next time.